Hi sewing friends, this is Janae King, and just like I promised, I am doing part 2 to Cabin by the Lake month 5. We are making the sun, and I promised you a part 2. So hopefully with part 2 it will explain a little bit more on how to put this block together. So in your kit you would have gotten a piece of paper that has, I'm sorry, you probably cannot see that. You have the pattern pieces on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of butcher paper, and on the paper side, not the shiny side, on the paper side, I'm going to trace out just the corners of the block. And it's going to be a triangle. So I'm actually doing the very first triangle at the start of the sun arch. And I am going to just mark out the 3 corners. I'm going to take a ruler and I'm going to connect the dots between the lines. I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. And I am just labeling that as A1 because that is A1 on your pattern. So guys, that's just gonna look like a little triangle. And that is A1, the first triangle on my pattern. The second triangle that I'm gonna trace is pattern piece A2. And A2 is also A4, A6, A8, and A10. So these are all going to be my orange pieces that will be the sun points. And so the nice thing is that once you've cut one, this template will last you probably 5 or 6 times. You'll be able to iron this onto fabric. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cut that triangle out. And there is my A2. Only other triangle that I'm gonna cut out right now is going to be the odd numbers. And I'm gonna do the dots in the corners. I'm going to trace the rounded part. And then for the 2 sides, I'm gonna go ahead and just connect the dots with a ruler. I'm also gonna label this for white background, and I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. So guys, the cool thing about butcher paper is that the shiny side sticks to your fabric when it's ironed, and I'm going to show you that in just a minute. So this is a great way to create shapes on fabric, and use the butcher paper template to do that. So the other 2 pieces that I've already cut out from the sun shape is the center. So this is the center of the block. And then this piece goes on the outside of the block. I took template plastic and I cut out, well, I traced the white background triangles, the orange triangles, and also those on either end there's the weird shaped triangles. So I traced those onto template plastic. And I don't know if you can see it, but I actually added the 1/4 inch seam allowance to this. So I did use these instead of using the butcher paper sometimes, because this, I could just lay this right onto the fabric and then trace out the shape that I needed and then cut it out. Now the only thing with this was I had to go back and add in my 1/4 inch seam allowance because it did not mark that onto the fabric. So doing the templates with the butcher paper, I'm going to show you in just a minute. It's really cool because we will add 1/4 inch seam allowance to this shape. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take, I'm going to take A1, which is the very first triangle on the page, which is going to be white. I'm going to take some white fabric and I am going to iron this little guy onto my white fabric. It just takes a hot, dry iron and you can press. And I know this is really hard to see because I'm facing a window, but the the piece of butcher paper is now ironed to the fabric and it's stuck. It's so slick. I love this. I'm gonna now take a ruler that I can see the 1/4 inch markings on it very well, and I am going to mark. So one of the things that I did bad was I ironed the butcher paper onto the right side of the fabric. It needs to be ironed onto the wrong side of the fabric. So I'm going to turn my fabric over and press that again. Now the cool thing about the butcher paper is you can re-stick it like 5 or 6 times. It's really nice. So I'm going to take a removable marking pen and I'm going to add a 1/4 inch to all the sides of the triangle. So I'm just laying the ruler a 1/4 inch beyond the edge of the paper. And I know there's one rounded edge at the bottom, so I just mark the 1/4 inch in the middle of that piece, and I just kind of eyeball and cut that 1/4 inch so it's a little bit rounded at the bottom. One of the other things that you want to do when you're tracing out your shapes is you also want to mark the edge of the paper pattern. So you will actually have 2 lines marked on your fabric. So I'm going to do that really quick so you can see what it looks like. Once you're done marking, you can actually take the triangle off. And now I'm going to cut the triangle out. So at the very top of my triangle, this is the fabric triangle. It's very, very tall and pointy. So what I'm going to do is I can see the original shape of my triangle here, and I just want to be a 1/4 inch above that, and I'm just going to trim that across so it's straight across at the top. Because you don't need that big, long, pointy thing at the top of your fabric. So I'm going to mark a 1/4 inch at the top and cut it straight across. So the triangle is actually going to be straight across at the top, but it's a 1/4 inch from the point of the triangle to the top of the piece. So I've now just created the first piece to the pattern, which is A1. The next piece I'm going to cut is going to be, sorry, that's my template plastic piece. I'm going to cut A2, and here's the triangle. This is the butcher paper triangle. So on the back side of some orange fabric, I'm going to press with the iron over the butcher paper, and it is stuck on there. Okay, so the next step then would be is to mark along the edge of the paper all the way around on all 3 sides of the triangle. And then you want to add a 1/4 inch to that. So I'm going to go over from the edge of the paper, and I am going to make another line, which is the 1/4 inch line. So there's definitely a pattern to making these quilt pieces, and the pattern is you stick on the butcher paper to the fabric, and then you mark right along the paper with a removable marking pencil, and then you add a 1/4 inch to that and make another line. So now I am ready to cut on the 1/4 inch line. Now certainly you could use a rotary cutter to cut these out. You do not have to do it with a scissor, but you know, I'm just kind of old-fashioned at heart, and I like using scissors, and I like doing it the old-fashioned way. Okay, so now you can see I have my triangle cut. I am going to measure a 1/4 inch from the point of the paper to the top, and I'm going to mark that and cut that at a 1/4 inch because I really don't want that extra fabric at the top. It just messes with sewing. So it's kind of a flat top. I can now take off the butcher paper, and I have A2 made and ready to go. Now the cool thing about this is I am ready to sew A1 and A2 together. And so what I need are some pins. I found these really great pins at Hobby Lobby, and they have a big head on them, but they're only a 1/2 inch long, and they're really cool. They're short and they're easy to pick up, and I love them. Okay, so here is piece A1 and here's piece A2. When I lay them down with right sides up, they are going to fit together pretty nicely. I'm going to lay them wrong sides together. I'm going to find the 1/4 inch corner on my orange, and I'm going to find the 1/4 inch point on my white. Now sometimes that doesn't mean that the fabric is exactly matching at the top and the bottom. It just means that those 1/4 inch markings are where they should be for when I stop and start sewing. So guys, I haven't sewed yet. I pinned together piece A1 and piece A2, and now I'm ready to sew them together. So I'm actually going to sew this on the machine. But I just sewed A1 to A2. I am going to continue on and sew a background piece, and then another sun point, and then another background piece, and so on until I have sewn the whole entire arch together